Okay, we'll call the meeting to order at 6:31 for the Committee of the Whole, Monday, December 4th, 2023. We do have most of the council members in chambers. We have one on virtual, so I'll try to keep my eye on the screen. Feel free to speak up if I don't see your hand come up, so that we make sure we get everyone involved. So with that, first is adoption of the agenda. The recommendation is that the December 4th, 2023 agenda be adopted as presented. Do I have a mover? Councillor Willis, seconded by Deputy Mayor. All in favor? Motion is passed. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest or the general nature thereof for this evening's meeting? None. We'll move to staff reports. The draft 2024 to 2027 strategic plan. Our CAO is here, so is there anything more to add at this time before we get into the item?
Certainly, just maybe a bit of explanation here. Council and staff have worked on 2 different sessions brainstorming an update to our strategic plan. So we've come up with the draft before you. It is certainly a work in progress. Staff have been working very hard the last quite a few weeks now on budget and working on budget. And so perhaps there's not been enough time to review this. So it's being brought to council really as a work in progress and to understand if council's okay with the main points of our strategic plan, the vision, mission, the priorities, and the objectives. The initiatives are much more fluid and we can certainly craft those, and staff will be reviewing them over the next month or so before a final version is brought back to council to look at. Today, what I'm looking at council is do we have it right, the priorities and objectives that were set by council and perhaps massaged a little bit by staff and myself to make the plan easier to understand and readable. We will be submitting this out for public comment after tonight's meeting. Those communications have been ready, and we're going to take, even more staff comments and all council comments into consideration in order to tweak and, wordsmith this plan to be what council really wants. So today I'm looking to see if, as I said, if the priorities and objectives are correct, and if there's any initiatives that council really wants to see that are missing. If there's something that you want to see, that's when we really want your input to see if anything that staff has suggested, if there's something missing that you feel should be added to that list. And finally, with respect to committees, I know we were before council quite a number of months ago about our committees, and we were going to bring a report back once the strategic plan has been set about any committees council what wishes to see out of the strategic plan. You'll see in the initiative there is a recommendation for one community sort of well-being committee. Not sure what it would be named, but one of the priorities in the plan is strong communities, and we felt that there'd be a number of things that committee could work on to make suggestions and recommendations to council of where they want to see us go in order to have those strong communities. So that's the only committee that the staff have come up with, and if council has anything else, so just looking for that input tonight too.
Thank you. Thank you. So with that, we'll start in on page 4 of the report. We can review the vision and the mission statement first. Just make sure that it's generally captured what the intent was. So the vision was thriving, innovative, and sustainable communities where all people are valued. And does that pretty much capture what the intent was at our session in Bath? I'm seeing nods and no hands, so we'll take that as a yes. The mission to promote a balanced quality of life for residents and businesses through the effective delivery of services and good governance while ensuring fiscal responsibility and environmental sustainability. Was there any other? Councillor Willis.
Through the chair, the word balanced. Is there background on why that word was chosen?
Certainly the former vision includes the word prosperous. And I believe we did hear from the public in the comments leading up to this update was originally, the old strategic plan didn't have the residents enough, sort of didn't mention residents and what we were doing for the residents and for the community. And at both of our sessions, we tried to incorporate more of that. And in part of the vision, the old mission used to say, provide support and services to promote a prosperous quality of life for residents. And I think we acknowledged that not everyone can be prosperous, or that it was too focused on financial goals. And I think we want to, try to ensure that we could balance their needs, try to kind of balance both, perhaps financial and otherwise. Certainly that, we weren't trying to focus necessarily just on money. And I think we had a lot of discussion about supporting healthy quality of life, but also, social services or housing, and employment. So I think that was the essence of the balance piece, was we would look at all aspects of someone's life and try to promote employment as well as, housing perhaps, and the recreational and the mental health, even healthcare kind of thing. So we really, it was just chosen to try to encapsulate that. And if it hasn't well enough, we're certainly open to wordsmithing that.
Are there any other comments or questions on the mission statement? Seeing none. The three guiding principles, I think does anyone have any concerns with those? I think that captures the three that we noted that day, from my recollection. If we go to the first priority, strong communities, and then we have 4 objectives. The 4 objectives that are there, does that capture what council was intending? Was there something else that should be added? Or one that misses the mark? Councillor Prodrick.
Just a general question, and this may flow through it. So the priorities, they're just listed here. They're not in any order right now. So I'm looking at, in the vision where all people are valued, and then I go down to the priorities. And I'm just trying to make a connection between, like, a thread, I guess, through vision, mission to priority. And I just see, maybe I'm missing something or just not getting it. There's only really 3 objectives that I see as going back to people are valued, making a connection back. Now, I guess we don't necessarily need to quantify it, but I'm just wondering what's the string that sort of brings them all together, that, we did hear that people are valued. And I guess in a simple way is, how do we get that out there?
I certainly think through strong communities, and there was some question I saw, why isn't it strong community singular versus plural? And I think we've realized over 4 years that we have very different communities of interest, whether that be the settlement areas, whether it be urban, rural, whether it be the island and the mainland. There is different communities of interest, and we can kind of build and strengthen all of our communities while not necessarily trying to make them homogeneous. With regard to the people, certainly fostering welcoming and inclusive communities is a big objective there, in terms of all people are valued. This is a new initiative, and that whole idea of welcoming and inclusiveness is new in the strategic plan. It wasn't there before, and I would say that there hasn't been a lot of work towards that in our community specifically. So I think this is new, and I think if you look under the initiatives for fostering welcoming and inclusive communities, we talked about welcome packages and establishing a diversity, equity, and inclusion action plan or commitment, and those kinds of things. So I think that's just maybe perhaps the first small steps. A lot of the other priorities also go back to thriving, innovative, and sustainable communities. So our infrastructure and our balanced growth really speak to those. Operational effectiveness does promote the customer service excellence and that piece, which I think also feeds into valuing our residents as we serve them.
Just another one, and I think you're probably going to come to this down the road, but how would, let's say, township branding fit into the vision? Like, would the vision be part of the branding, I guess? I don't know if you'd make T-shirts up with all that on it, but
Certainly, you see one of the objectives is promoting loyalist identity still. I think we want people to be proud of where they live and where they work. And I think as we, if we rebrand that with a sort of a catchy or something that everyone can perhaps sink their teeth into, that would be helpful. I fully believe that we can recognize our diverse communities such as Bath and Wilton and Odessa and Amherstview and still be one and be proud of here. There are so many diverse community groups as well that I think we have to figure out how to, like you said, Councillor Broderick, the sort of one string that binds them all is service to our community. And we have such a great community because of their contributions. So I think in the initiatives is also something we talk about building partnerships with community groups. Some of our branding and our marketing strategy, even with our website, is trying to bring in a community calendar so that we have more sharing of information of all the services that are available in our community and share that between the individual groups. So I think through those kinds of initiatives, it'll certainly help sort of recognize the community.
Councillor Willis.
Through the chair. I really like the direction that's going in, that the, Loyalist is a mosaic of different communities, and celebrating that and recognizing it is great. A lot of the objectives on this page are measurable. They're done or not done or whatever. But the first four, I'm just wondering, do we have a sense of what our baseline is and how we're going to measure success against these objectives?
I think in a strategic plan, you sort of go from the very high level to lower. And I think objectives aren't necessarily all measurable to deliver. I think that's the idea about the initiatives. And I do acknowledge that quite a few of the initiatives are not SMART goals, even though I said that to people in the brainstorming sessions probably a dozen times about trying to measure and make it a SMART goal so we know when we have succeeded. We also don't have a lot of KPIs or baseline measurements, those kinds of things. We do have some statistics with respect to, income or some of the general census statistics. And we do have quite a bit of data in our community safety and well-being plan about sort of the nature of people. So we've done a number of planning pieces, and so ideally it's the initiatives that I want to come back to council and say, well, here's initiatives we've identified that will meet those objectives, and saying how they meet that. So ideally we will come back, and that's the report card piece. Have we measured and delivered these SMART objectives? And they should be exactly measured that way so that, if you like check or not check, right? They're not very generic. They're very specific about have you delivered this or not. Now, some objectives may have pieces, and you'll see later under organizational effectiveness, this is one of the good examples of fostering, what is this? Enhancing engagement, place where people want to work. And there's an initiative we have in there that talks about some of our leadership and our corporate culture development, how we have town halls. We've initiated town halls and a leadership forum and mentorship and peer support groups and those kinds of things. Some of those will be ongoing, and certainly trying to improve our culture or a place everybody wants to work. It won't be one and done. So as a report card, it will be, and here's something else we've done in order to foster that objective. So ideally, the initiatives will be, as you've asked, SMART, and we can report on those. But some of the objectives are broader, and I don't think they'll ever be done or be able to be completed per se.
Councillor Ennis.
Thank you. Just a comment, I don't think it doesn't change anything, but just on number one, the foster public awareness, engagement, and involvement. I think for me, that one's is about ultimately about trust, and building trust with the community and with the township. And I think so the awareness is always good. And just thinking about it in that vein, sometimes if we kind of think about it as well, think about engagement or involvement as a barometer of trust. I mean, it could go either way, right? Like, you get it could mean residents are happy with the direction if they don't feel they need to fill in a survey on a particular topic, for example. So just a comment, I think that one's sort of ultimately about trust. So glad to see it in there. And then the other one I'm also was happy to see in there was number 3. I think we've sort of strengthened that one from previous plans. So and may have been thought of a little bit more in the past that municipal governments didn't have as much influence on that, but I think there are a lot of things we can do to help strengthen and promote quality of life and well-being. So I'm glad to see that in there.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Anything you wish to share? Deputy Mayor.
I'd actually only just piggyback on Councillor Innes's comment. I mean, because of this, being committee of the whole, it is worthwhile, fleshing out how each of us interpret what's there. And the involvement piece for me is, has a lot to do with the specific democratic processes, with the democratic process of council itself, strengthening that public participation in our actual democratic processes, which we know we need for all kinds of different reasons to produce wonderful counselors like us, and also for our decision making. I mean, we know, and certainly those of us who have been on council previously know that you can often run into making decisions and then you get a lot of pushback because people weren't aware of the process, and we get that a lot, and staff have come on leaps and bounds in trying to address that. But I think to drill down on involvement in council itself, in our democratic process, it's not just simply public consultation exercises about recreational activities and so on and so forth, but actually in what we do well.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Yeah, we're going to work our way right down through. I thought we'd just take each topic and then we'll work our way down or each priority. We'll go right down the list. Yeah. Councillor Willis.
Just jumping forward to when we're communicating this to the public and the community, I would just really encourage as much as we can the use of plain language, that we don't use kind of jargon or words that we may use frequently, but that we make it very accessible by making it very clear what we're saying on each of the items.
Thank you. So under strong communities, the objectives, is there any further comments, questions, any insight that anyone wishes to provide? Councillor Parks.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay? I just wanted to kind of jump in a little bit too on the strong communities. I really like that we're actually trying to get involvement from the residents and trying to engage them into the processes. I know what the deputy mayor was saying on our level, but I think it is important that we do continue to try to build that awareness and that involvement with the residents, whether it's for committees or not. So I do like the way that the strong communities is set up.
Thank you. Councillor Broderick.
I would just add Councillor Innes's comment there about trust, and I know that we've had one or two issues recently where people want to know a decision, why it was made, And I think as long as we have that, I hate to use this term, but political capitals, we've made decisions for what we believe are the right reasons at that time. That goes to building more community involvement. And I think the town halls, although some were sparsely attended, is a good start to get people involved because, you know, there might have been 2, maybe next time there's 4 and so on. And people see it more as a non-confrontational type gathering as opposed to we're going to talk about issue X because everybody's PO'd about it. And I think that's the way you build the trust. So then when you do go to the community, you have that common understanding of, you know, maybe the members of the community or the groups and how you can work together as opposed to come at something at loggerheads because it's an issue.
Thank you. Counselor Budrick.
Through you. One thing I would like to suggest though, as much as we all understand that we have many varying communities within our municipality, that we aim towards kind of bringing everyone together towards a single community. In the end, it's going to take time. I know that. We have very varying portions of our community, but if that's our goal too, that would be great because if we can all come together, it would be far more beneficial to our municipality.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? We've talked a lot about community involvement and community knowledge of what we do and what our goals are. And the one thing, I've mentioned this before, but the one benefit of COVID was the live streaming and having our council meetings and all of our committees online. And I think that has really opened a lot of people's eyes. They're more engaged, they're watching, and I'm getting feedback, which is good. Lots of questions, and a lot of times the questions, once there's a discussion, it's not that they object, it's just they didn't know why. And that's a really good way for us to be able to build the respect from the community and the trust that's been mentioned here as well. And so do you want us to just highlight the initiatives, or
I would just-
they're very much a work in progress and they're still ongoing? And I know that they're being developed and
Okay.
wordsmithed.
I don't think we have to
right now.
wordsmith them tonight. However, I want to make sure that if there's any specific smart initiatives that council would like to see that are missing from this, ideally, the initiatives are going to be reviewed on an annual basis and some may come off and new ones may come on. This is going to be part of the ongoing monitoring of this plan. So if, you know, next year or the year after something else comes up for council's interest and you want to place it in here as an initiative under another objective, that's certainly possible. And we will sort of draft this document. This final document will be kind of a living document that way. So it's not, you know, speak now or forever hold your peace. It's just if there's something you've thought of, I just wrote down town halls because that's, I think, a big thing that we kind of introduced, but it certainly is a very measurable thing to have in order to foster public awareness, engagement, and involvement, is to continue with those. And that's a very smart goal to set for that objective.
So with that, page 7 of our report lists the initiatives that would follow through for strong communities. And I know I've got ways that we can wordsmith and clarify, not new initiatives or anything. So that's the kind of thing that can be worked on. With the ones that are provided, does council feel that they captured the intent of what we were looking for? Or is there something else that you'd like to see added or removed for that matter? Councillor Broderick?
Excuse me. I like what I see here. Again, only sort of 4, I guess, major bullets with with supporting initiatives underneath. I have a few questions, if I may.
Yes.
I like the rebranding because I don't see Loyalist having a brand. Like, to be honest, right now, I don't see a brand anywhere. And I don't think if you ask the community, is there a Loyalist brand? I don't know if they could. I have a question on number 1.22. Include diverse demographics and committee representation. Is that a ward representation, or like you get in? I just feel you should encourage diverse demographics as opposed to include, but that's just, maybe I'm just hung up on a word. The last one on the second bullet. Include diverse demographics and committee representation.
Oh, ideally, we're just looking for, again, our diverse community. So it might be geographically, so it might be someone from each of the settlement areas, but it could also be culturally diverse
Yeah.
or, as we go through that, that's some of the census data that we can analyze and you'll see in here, there is identifying a DEI commitment, an action plan to diversity in our community. So we want to just make sure that as we represent even, for accessibility, for instance,
Okay.
and youth and seniors, and I think diverse, it's very broad, that the intent on that. So ideally, we would have those, like a diverse group on our committees is something we could, perhaps we have to do a better way of recruiting for our committees so that we make sure that we get that diversity.
Yeah, and I think it's fair to say in committees I've been on, often you recruit people because it's hard to get outside in without something. I don't know what that something is. I do like 135 a lot. And I think that might be the committee, because I think, and I can only speak for myself, I heard a lot about traffic calming, speed, things like that, especially in the urban areas. And I know it's not just limited to the urban area, so maybe that's a committee that could work with that, because I think that's long overdue. And then the one right below at 1.3.6, I think that's great. Some kind of youth senior center, but again, it's the physical where, how, I think that there's obviously a need for it. I had a teenager for, I guess, how many years? 6 years. And if you want to do something, you were either at the rink or you were downtown, going to the mall or something, because we really don't have that. But if there is something like that, that would be great. And the last one that I really like is 142, create a welcome package. And I'm putting my minor hockey hat on here. Over the years, it was amazing the number of people that would go to Kingston for programming because they didn't know, for whatever reason, whether it's minor hockey or whatever. And I think that's the first step. And then people know, the garbage pickup, the recycling, all those things that when you move to a new community, you're so overwhelmed, or I was when I did, that you need that support. I like them all, but those are the ones I really like.
Thank you. Did I see your hand up, Councillor Willis?
Of course. Excuse me. As I read through all of them, the question I ask is how, right? So something like the welcome package, and don't expect an answer tonight, of course, but just, great idea. How would that get implemented? Would that be something that's actual physical, or is it part of our website, or what? So that's what I would be looking at in the future. I like the idea of the youth engagement plan. I particularly like the idea of youth participation on committees when we talk about the diversity, having seniors and youth. And perhaps even a youth advisory committee would come out of that youth engagement plan. I think that's very important. We talk about public awareness, engagement, involvement. We have the report of concern page already on our webpage. And I've not seen a report back to council on the concerns that have been brought in on that tool. So I would like to see that included, that there's more frequency of reports back on that. Rebranding, my back always gets up with rebranding because it can be a very big and distracting thing for staff and for the organization. So I kind of made a note saying, or do we strengthen our existing branding versus throwing out everything we have and starting again? Again, the including diverse demographics in the committee representation, my note I made to myself was how? Like, how do we do that effectively? Number 1.3.2, create balanced, accessible, and inclusive opportunities. Again, it's that balanced that I think we need to be very clear on what our definition of that is. What's the other one? Sorry. Senior and youth center. I added an S at the end because we do have different communities and both of these are groups that would not necessarily have transportation. And I just wondered, is the vision that would be physical spaces or would it be programming in spaces that already exist?
I think this was thrown out as like in ideal situation, we'd have a new physical location for that. I think, you know, we're a long way from that. And I guess the next step to this is you'll see some of these initiatives with some timings in them. And certainly a senior youth center is not going to be at the beginning of this plan. It'll be something more towards the end. And it might just be that we have a plan for how we implement it when and if, you know, we have the LAC freeze up because it's different space and that kind of thing. I think there was some discussion there, you know, the house is how staff are going to have to do this. But what I'm going to say is that we will return to council sort of with some time frames on how this happens. And when we report back, we can report on some of those hows you've asked for, Councillor Willis. But ideally, the senior center, it's always used during the day and youth centers are generally in the evening and, you know, weekends. So it's quite possible that we'd have multifunction, that kind of piece. If it is a center, that would be a great dream to have. But if we have to just do programming as the first step to achieve some of this youth programming and some supports and services for our youth, then that's the first step that we have. Also, if I can also comment on the rebranding, yeah, there was no expectation that we're going to come up with a new logo and rebranding. It was sort of more of the motto, the brand name that we could all then sink our teeth into as, yeah, that's us and that's who we are. And, you know, we want everyone, even though they may be very proud of being from Bath, and Bath is, there's lots of celebration of the traditions and the history of Bath. They can still be proud to be called Loyalist Home.
Thank you for that. Thank you very much. And I think it's unfortunate the last strategic plan got derailed by a little thing called COVID for a number of years, but I was really glad when you mentioned about bringing back a general timeline so that we can have some idea of when different things are going to be happening, both so that the public knows, but also so that we are all able to manage what we're asking staff to do, because this is great, but it could bury people.
Thank you. I'll come back to you, Councillor Ennis.
Thank you. I think it's a very, the initiatives list, a very good comprehensive list. The two that came to mind that I think might have been in previous versions, one was the IMP is mentioned, just I didn't think specifically about the active transportation plan and the road safety plan, but I presume that's sort of part and parcel with the IMP, which is mentioned. And the other one was, and I think it was in previous version as well, but the employment industrial lands kind of plan, which I think there's already some work being done on that, but just to ensure we have a plan in place to capitalize on any future opportunities with that. But those are the only two I could think of. Otherwise, I think it's a great list.
Thank you. Councillor Budryk.
Through you, sir. The only thing that I love everything I have here except the second 1.22 about which Councillor Product spoke to. If we could do a better job of getting the message out for people to be on committees. I know we struggle with participation, unfortunately, with a few of our committees in certain geographical areas. If we could work on that to bolster people's participation, that's really the only thing I could see. Thanks.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Onto that point, and that's more of a point for us as council than it is for staff. I think that part of the piece in getting more participation in committees is augmenting the importance of committees in our decision-making process. Because, there have been times in the past where, committee will do a whole bunch of work and then, council decides to go a completely different way, which that's the democratic process. And sometimes that happens, but I think there's a larger piece for us as a council to try and identify for the community that we want more committee involvement because we want to take the work of committees seriously.
So that may go back to just a good solid terms of reference and an understanding of what the committee is and the outcomes from it. And I know I'm on some other committees, not township related. And that's one of the things that came up is we really need to review the terms of reference and make sure that we're all on course and fully understand what the objective is of the committee. That's a good point. Councillor Prodrick.
I can just go back to Councillor Willis's comments earlier about 1.14, youth engagement. I think one of the things that I remember vividly from going to AMO was we got to meet them where they are. And I think maybe if you're going to have a youth engagement strategy, got to go into the school. We're lucky here in that really Loyalist has one high school and we do feed outside of Loyalist, but I think that's maybe a strategy that could be included somehow down the road is get into the schools and build out from there because when you get them in a captive audience, and I was in a class a couple weeks ago, they're willing to engage.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I guess a little bit of a example for that was even the local government week when we invited grade fives and we had a lot of grade fives, but it was such a good day. And I've received so many positive comments from it. Parents that when they meet me, the kids talked about it for days at home. And I thought that's success. If you get a grade 5 that remembers and keeps talking about it for a few days, we've piqued their interest. So if we can hang on to that, because that's our next, there's going to be members up here in the future. That's what we need. Any other comments or questions on this, the initiatives under strong communities? Being none, we'll just go back up to page 4, sustainable infrastructure and services. And we have the objectives. There's 4 objectives with it as well. So I'll just go back to council. Do these capture what the intent was? And is there any enhancements or any changes? Councillor Willis.
Through the chair. The second objective, enhance level of service provided in a realistic and sustainable way. I'm just asking to reconsider the word realistic, and it just sounds like a word that's designed to shut down conversation rather than open it up.
Thank you. Other comments, questions? Deputy Mayor.
It's interesting that Councillor Willis picked that out because I was going to pick that out, and I don't necessarily disagree with Councillor Willis's point. Again, I don't want to get into the wordsmithing here because that's not what we're doing tonight. But on that point, I do think there is some value in having an alternative to that demonstrates that we can't have pie in the sky. You know, we can't have everything we want all the time, always. So, and I feel that that too is part of what we discussed, and how delicately you can convey that. We can get into the wordsmithing later. I just wanted to that point.
Yes, Councillor Wallace.
It could be so, as simple as in a responsible and sustainable way. Just
Any other comments, questions, Councillor Broderick?
I just like, number 4, responsible financial planning for operations and capital plans. And, hopefully that is sort of over a number of years looking ahead. I know the Conservation Authority, we've just gone into our strategic plan, and that's one of the things we're looking at, a multi-year, financial plan to try and support whatever comes forth. I guess, now wait, no,
You're good? Okay. Any other comments, questions? And seeing none, your point, Councillor Broderick, with the multi-year, we do have that to a point now, but I always feel that that's I remember back when I was doing more public works style stuff. They thought if you had a 3-year plan, you were golden. And then you realize you're not. And so they went to 5. And really now, if you're not planning quite a ways down the road, you need to have the plan there for an extended period, and then the fiscal method to reach that will come, I think will come out of it. And I think that's where the planning really comes in, because especially now when the cost of everything has skyrocketed, and projects that we thought we could do for a sum of money and now it's 1.5 or more. That plan comes in handy to be able to see what we can bundle, what we can't, what we can, what way we could be able to achieve what we need to. So that's a good point. Any other comments, questions? Being none, we can go down to page 8 of 10. 2 of the list. And I've got it. There we go. Any thoughts or comments on this list? Councillor Willis, I see you grinning.
sorry, this is a really exciting piece of work, and I think that it's really important. It's going to guide what we do for the next few years. So yeah, I have a lot of comments and questions. One is there's reference in this a couple of times to Citywide. I assume that's a software program of some sort.
Yes, certainly it's the main software program we use for our asset management planning. Work orders as well as customer requests, but ideally we're going to be able to tie it together with some other pieces and to improve the reporting. Really is going to work in what council has requested, better financial planning for our assets.
If I could carry on, thank you. There's reference to Parks and Rec Master Plan, Recreation Service Delivery Plan, and a Recreation and Culture Master Plan. Are those all the same document?
No, actually. So the Recreation Master Plan, the Parks and Recreation Master Plan is the one that just went out for RFP that we're doing this year with public input, which really is a more practical roadmap. There was one done in 2017. However, it was sort of too high a level and was not a practical roadmap for staff in terms of where we went. And the Recreation Service Delivery Review was different. That was done in 2019, I believe. Oh, 21. So that's a more recent piece, which talks about more like programming service delivery. And under here, in terms of enhancing service, we wanted to implement some of the recommendations in that plan. So that's a plan that's already done And one thing we did hear from our public survey was stop planning and start doing. And so we did try to have a focus on implementing some recommendations from some of these types of plans. And so the recreation service delivery plan is something that's already done, but they want to like enhance programming. And then you asked also about the culture, arts, culture, heritage master plan. That's separate. That was in the last strategic plan about our heritage assets and having a plan for those. This has been broadened a little bit to include arts and culture. I believe this came from our HCT division, who are looking at, our collections, our museums, our heritage assets. We kind of need to know what we're going to do about that. Those things, I think it's still important from the last plan, and it's been brought forward to this plan.
Sorry, I forgot my mic. The last one that I had, the asset management plan, and I probably should already know this, does it include land and buildings owned by the township?
Yes, not land. Not land.
Not land, so, but buildings?
Yes.
That are owned by the township. And the final comment I had under the responsible financial planning for operations and capital plan, I would love to see us track and improve on our capital budgets versus actual spend. I've noticed a lot of times we're coming back to council asking for more money for projects. So if that could be, I'm sure it falls under that 10-year capital plan, but just having a bit more accountability with the budget versus actual results on those.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Councillor Proderick.
Thank you. Comment, it's good to see the climate action lens in there, and I think the experience of maybe the last couple of weeks would tell me that we need to emphasize that more and more to all our decision making, and no matter what's involved. As you said, if you can have all kinds of plans, but if you don't implement or act on them, they're useless. Councillor Willis took one of my questions, so I had to make up. I'll make up some new ones. Just a couple of things, and I don't know. Madam CAO, Mrs. CAO. No, I don't. I'm not being funny here. I'm just. You called Rebecca, but I don't think that's proper in a meeting. Couple things. So they're really a land inventory of the township, and I had asked you earlier for a map of the township and the land inventory. That is something that I think, whether it's in here or somewhere else in some of the initiatives that we should look at in terms of housing, affordable housing, whatever the catchphrase is now, and maybe some of our building sites that are, for whatever reason, not in use or becoming available to tender out or something. I think those are some things we should be looking at. And I'm going to mention it because I don't see, Laurie's here, but I know Carrie's not here. So pickleball courts, tennis courts. And I know there's a few other projects in the background with the recreation discussions going on with different groups about different things. And I guess just an overall thought is I think we need to do better with our waterfront. And the example of the kayak, I can't come up with the name of the company, the gentleman and his son that ran that kayak program. I'd be interested to get some follow-up from the township side point of view of how successful that program is, and how much use there was, because I was only there a couple times and it was in those high peak where you expect lots of people. So I'd just be interested in maybe initiatives like that are, in that case, didn't cost the township anything, I don't think. But those are the type of things. And I do think with the waterfront, when we do have a township event at Fairfield or in Bath, they're well attended, and maybe it's just a question of taking advantage of maybe other groups that do things, music in the park, etc. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions, comments, suggestions? Seeing none, we will move to balanced growth. Scrolling along. Page 4. So we have balanced growth and we have 4 objectives associated to that. Again, we'll just come back and does that capture what the intent was? Are there any suggestions, questions, comments? Deputy Mayor.
Just a comment really on number 2. I mean, obviously, we know that the provincial government has made housing, you know, a major priority. However, we continue to face the problem of the market driving what it considers affordable and attainable. And I think that's going to continue to be a challenge for us, you know, to try and address what is actually affordable and attainable for our residents within our municipality. Again, it's a larger problem that certainly not staff are gonna solve. But I think, you know, again, when we're talking about these things at a high level, I do definitely support that as an objective, but it's a challenging one.
Thank you. Yes.
If I just may comment on that, I think we had a different word before about provide for those kinds of things. And we did take it to plan to recognize our role in this. Sometimes our role is not actually providing some of these things. These initiatives are either supporting or advocating or partnering. There's a number of ways in which these objectives can be obtained. It's not necessarily just the township providing them.
Thank you. And that was something I was going to mention at the end. And it's even, there's places in here where it talks about partnering and one would be the county. And that could be a county initiative that we could partner with them as well as developers and anyone who wishes to build anything in this area. We can certainly make sure that we're ready to receive those plans. Did I see your hand up, Councillor Boudreau?
One quick note on 3.4.6, development and implement trails master plan. I know there's an Awash meeting tomorrow. One thing I've gotten some feedback from some of the landowners in that going forward is communication and their buy-in. That's all. It's just something we need to be cognizant of. That's all as we move forward.
Is there anything else with objectives? Councillor Pratt.
Thank you. Just sort of a extension of what the deputy was saying. I think 2 and 3 are both ones obviously we need to work at, but again, it's market driven and it's hard to, do you build the houses, do you build the low income housing or whatever you want to call it, or you bring in the commercial. It's sort of, you're caught between a rock and a open space, I guess is the best way to put it. And I do think we're badly overdue for growth in both areas, the affordable housing and the commercial development.
Agreed. Thank you. Any other comments, questions, suggestions? Councillor Willis.
Late to the game, I'm sorry. Number 3.2.1, I'm really looking forward to the zoning bylaw being updated because we need that. And I think that it's very important that the township take the lead in determining how development is happening in this township, that it's not being led by developers. Under 3.2.1, what is an as of right policy?
So for instance, I believe in our current zoning bylaw, you can only have one dwelling unit, but it would be to update our zoning bylaw so that those permissions are included in those zones as of right. They don't have to apply for rezoning for accessory units, but it could be other as of right permissions in commercial zones or other residential zones as well.
Thank you. So I'll just note, we're on initiatives now, I guess. So we'll go to page 9 of 10. Counselor Broderick.
Thank you, Your Worship. Again, I think, obviously everybody wants to increase transit services, and I think that would be a boon, is that the word I want, to development, in the sense that many times we see a committee of adjustment with developers coming to get a variance because, you know, so-and-so, but we don't have the transportation right now to support a lot of growth, so we've got to get into that. I like the idea of a downtown revitalization plan, and I know in the urban area of Amherst, you drive along certain streets and just like, there's no life there. It's just, you know, you're driving by and you could be driving anywhere in the world past a mall or whatever. And I hope that business or schools or whoever takes just like in Bath and on Amherst Island, that there's a community groundswell of support to get involved with that. I do like 3.4.5, the concept of naturalization of property. And again, going back to the climate action plan, and I know that I've had a couple of situations where residents have come to me with issues because, you know, so-and-so doesn't like the fact that I'm got a pollinator garden, et cetera, et cetera. So I think there are, you know, that's something that needs to go, and that goes part and parcel with the bylaw review, I guess. And 3.2 and 3.23, again, it's hopefully the next county council will be well represented by loyalists, and not that they are now, but, you know, I hear things, and just that we've got to somehow get it happening here. And I don't know how you do it. You know, it's so many levels of government and different things. And like Councillor Willis said, often it's developer driven, and maybe we need to take a drive and do some of the driving somehow, whatever that drive may look like. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments, suggestions, questions? Seeing none. Oh, Councillor Willis, did you have another one?
Sorry, always late to the game. Just under the business development and economic development, I would hope that we continue to require from the county what the county is expected to do in those areas, and that we don't start spending money creating departments within the township that should be at the county, and we should be able to get those services from them.
I've put a fair bit of thought into that. That's been a conversation, I guess, ever since, well, maybe not ever since I've been on council, but the last couple of terms for sure. And I guess that's sort of my train of thought too. And I've talked it over with the CAO too, kind of trying to figure out if I'm on the right track, but we don't want to reinvent the wheel, and we don't want to spend money that we don't need to. So if we've already got an investment in it, then we work with that investment to make sure that we're getting return. And we have recently, you know, we've succeeded quite well industrially. But that's not to say that there isn't more out there that everybody just has to keep working together to make sure that we're succeeding, I think. Yes.
And I certainly think staff in recent months, you know, this year have had more conversations with county economic development, just realizing that it's not a fee for service with the county economic development department. Their mandate is to do what county council has asked them to do with respect to tourism or economic development, and they do provide quite a number of services for our businesses here. However, their focus is not doing economic development for Loyalist, and we don't have a service level agreement that way. So I believe, you know, the initiative is really to kind of look at what's missing from those services on a county-wide basis that maybe Loyalists specifically are not getting provided.
It's quite a diverse department too at the county level. It's got everything from the force, they have managed force and everything to right down to economic development. So the tourism is a big part of it. And you can see how different places in the county, one might look like it's being serviced better in one area than the other, but when you put it all together, I guess it's big picture for them, but we've been very successful lately. We just have to keep moving ahead. Any other comments, suggestions? Seeing none. Organizational effectiveness, back up. Back up to page 4. And it's got 4 objectives as well. Any comments, questions, suggestions from council? Councilor Prager.
Just one question. Can you expand maybe just the concept of what effective governance is within the organization?
Certainly, generally, it's meant to be related to council and council decisions, so effective governance with oversight and transparency and accountability through business processes that we're doing, reviewing procedural bylaw, ensuring all of our meetings are broadcast. Those are some of the things with good governance. Internally, it's not very sexy, but ensuring we have good policies in place, policy review, consistency. That way we do have some work to do with respect to, regular reviews of policies and bylaws and some of those pieces. Updating the zoning bylaw is also one of them. It's overdue for ensuring that, we're keeping current with current legislation and those kinds of things. So for us, good governance is to make sure those are in place.
Yes, carry on.
Maybe just, I'm looking too much into this, but I guess in terms of governance, you said internal. So in terms of maybe departments and employees, like, is that something that's considered in terms of how governed isn't the right word, but how you're evaluating, I guess, your employees is the best way I could put it. In my background, is that part of the effectiveness, or is that just something that's sort of dealt with on an ad hoc basis?
Let's say employee performance review is certainly part of organizational effectiveness. And here, we've come up with some other wording, the objective of effective and efficient workplace culture where people want to work and staff are engaged. That essentially replaced the employer of choice. For some reason, sometimes the employer of choice phrase has some negative connotations. We were trying to get away from that. But performance reviews, as you mentioned, is part of being an effective organization. Getting value for money. Are we getting value out of staff? Are we getting performance like we wanted to? Under here, you'll see initiatives that talk about customer service and bringing in our customer service policy. We have some standards right now, but it's a very sort of limited lens policy, but looking at customer service and what we want to be and do for the corporation.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
On that particular point, and I take the CAO's point about the language around employer of choice and how that has had some negative connotations. One of the things that was always intuitive for me about that was that you had to pony up for that, basically. And I don't want us to lose that in the focus as well. Like if we want the excellent staff that we want and we know that we need, we're going to have to pay them properly. And as we've dealt with at the county recently, to be competitive, you need to be competitive. So within that, I just don't want, even though I completely accept changing the language from employer of choice. I mean, language changes and takes on other connotations. So I completely accept the rationale there. I just don't want us to lose that commitment, on our part, to having competitive packages for our staff.
Thank you. Is there any other comments, questions? I think just to follow up on that, the one other piece that I keep I'm finding is it's a critical piece, but it's one that is very effective, is empowering our staff to excel. And I really, I like that term in that, you know, everything all rolls together to make a great workforce, and really we're as good as our staff. And so when I find that when we empower them, that they can excel and work to their optimum, we're never disappointed. And so that's always, whether you call it employer of choice or anything else, I call it success. Any other comments, questions? Councillor Broderick.
Can I just add to that? And I'm going back to my own professional background, is not only empower them, but give them the opportunity to, and it's a pretty strong word, but fail. And to take a chance. And then if that's the, you know, if the outcome isn't what is wanted, is to support them. And I think that's one thing that I sort of feel that, to be honest, that sometimes I think people are afraid to make, not a mistake, but to take a chance. And I think in terms of, you know, being a unique community, or, you know, somebody didn't start a company without having a risk. And I think sometimes we got to take risks, and, you know, hey, if it fails, it fails. But if it doesn't, you don't know what the opportunities are. And I think, you know, that's part of the whole process of moving ahead, I think, is no team gets better by constantly winning. You know, you've got to have these little side blips or failures to maybe sometimes move in a different direction. But I do agree with your comments.
Deputy Mayor.
And you know, to further on that, and to further on the mayor's point, that it links you know, into number 4, into business continuity and reliability and resiliency. And one of the things that I've appreciated that, you know, was done in the last council, and to our current CAO's credit, has been more than brilliantly continued in this council, is the flexibility that our internal org chart has had. That we've always seen that, at least in the last council and in this council, as a work in progress document. And that prevents the kind of siloed fiefdom approach, but it also allows, you know, the CAO in particular to be able to identify the particular talents and skills of certain members of staff, and be able to retain those skills and talents by having the flexibility to put people where they need to be within the organization.
Excuse me. Thank you. Are there any other comments or suggestions on the organizational effectiveness objectives? And if not, yes, we'll go down to the initiatives, page 10 of 10. Any comments, questions, suggestions? Councillor Broderick.
I'm going to get in before Councillor Willis's massive notes here. Just a couple of things. Procedural bylaw, well overdue. My only, I guess my hope with that is when a member of the public wants to find out a bylaw about dog licenses, for example, they just type in dog licenses and not have to know a name or a number. If you go on the website now and try to find a bylaw on numerous things, you get sometimes you get 40 things that say, you know, when that was discussed, because the search engine finds everything about dog licenses, for example. So maybe in the search engine, and I don't know how that all plays out, more of a common vernacular, to use that term, for researching, so that the resident can take some ownership in looking things up. The one thing, just, and this is on 4.3.2, customer service excellence, train staff on customer service expectations. I think that's great, but I think we need to share it with the community so that they know, you know, we all know of corporations will say you will have a call back from a person within 24 hours. You may not have the solution, but at least you've got acknowledgement that you've received a call. So I think that's important. And from an internal point of view, this might have come up in the last section, but just maybe a concept to throw it at you. Maybe you're doing it and I just don't know about it, or maybe they're done in the departments. Is sort of a I don't want to call it a mentorship program, but maybe some kind of we used to do in the school system um, leadership development, we called it. So several times a year, staff were released to go to what we call it. It was an internal led, almost like a school where people were given an opportunity to research or to listen to the CAO. You know what the role of the CAO and et cetera, to get sort of an internal culture of, well, I want that. I want to take out the CAO, but you know, I want to aspire to that and try and keep it internal so that people aren't, and I know people move for different reasons, but I might be oversimplifying it, but just something internal that develops staff and give them background sometimes on why decisions are made or not made, right? Because sometimes the hardest decision is not to make a decision sometimes, but I do think that like that would be my one overriding comment. The two were the bylaw and the idea of sharing with the community so they know what the expectation is when they deal with whoever.
Yes, please.
I do want to say this. I'm happy to respond to Councillor Broderick that my predecessor established a leadership forum, but it was more like just a sort of info sharing. So we've rebranded it Leadership Forum 2.0, which now highlights a different staff member at each time as a networking opportunity. And it's open to all staff, whether or not they're in a management position or not, to be a leader, because I fully believe that every staff member can be a leader. You don't have to be a manager to do that. You can join the social committee or the health and safety committee, or you can, step up and help a new person start there. So we are already doing that, and I think seeing some interest from staff in becoming leaders, and it's really going to help with our position. And we are also establishing job shadowing and a mentorship program for our staff. So those are some of the corporate culture things I'll put in here for sure. So the next report card I can say, check, done.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments, suggestions? Councillor Willis.
Councillor Broderick didn't ask all my questions. Under ensuring effective governance, one thing that I would like to see, whether it's in our procedural bylaw review, we often discuss something at council, staff are given direction, and we don't know when that thing is coming back. So something that's tracking the things that are to be coming back to council so that we know when to expect them, so that we're not hounding staff because something just blipped up in our email again. The ward boundary review, I think that, that's time sensitive and when that needs to be done before the next election. So obviously a priority. I would be not me if I didn't say that the renewable energy grant policy is one of the ones that needs to be reviewed sooner rather than later. In the effective and efficient workplace, I think that that's an area where it's really important that we have strong KPIs that can get reported back to council on what we're doing there. I would love to see some inclusion of 360-degree reviews for management and staff so that we can put good development plans together for those folks. We talk about exit interviews. I've always been a big proponent of stay interviews where we're asking people what would ever make them leave the township so that we can address those things before we lose the good people. Training staff on customer service expectations, 4.3.2. I think that's important, but also how to fulfill those expectations is a really big piece of that. And finally, the same as I, sometimes feel like things may fall into a black hole with coming back to council. I think that also happens sometimes with resident concerns and questions. So maybe citywide is the tool that we use for that, so that if somebody has a question about their property, that we know that it's been responded to. I think we can make a lot of progress with that. And I'm very glad to see update emergency response plan and evacuation and heating and cooling centers, since that's a big conversation right now. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Any other, Counselor Ennis?
Thank you. Just a plug for the items under ensure effective governance. And, you know, as has been mentioned, I don't think review and revise outdated bylaws is particularly an exciting item, but they do enable us, a lot of them, to make, to do our jobs better. And I find often, I think I've seen some laundry list of bylaws that do need to be updated. And often those sort of get put to the side because fires pop up and day-to-day work gets in front of us. But just a plug that I do think that if we tackle some of those, it does help us all do our jobs better.
Thank you. Any other comments? Any items to bring forward? Being none. So that concludes, I guess, the review of the draft strat plan. Are there any overarching comments that anyone wishes to make at this time before the next step, I believe, would be just to go to our recommendation and receive it. So, Councillor Parks?
Thank you, through your worship. Just wanted to say thanks for staff for the hard work that they put in this. It's been something that, unfortunately, because of COVID through the last term of council, kind of got delayed and there was some challenges with that. I think it's a good structure to start with and moving forward, I think there's maybe some language massaging that needs to happen, but I think all in all, it's a really good plan.
Thank you. Did I see your hand up, Councillor Broderick? Yes, please.
Thank you. If I can just maybe go to page 5 of 10 for a minute. So just under the monitoring schedule, just a suggestion, and I don't know how in-depth the monitoring will be, to be honest, but why not combine the, if you're going to do a bi-monthly update with staff, why not just do the council at the same time? Like, would there be a big difference between what you report to staff in this and what might be reported to council?
I don't know that it's necessarily a reporting difference. I think bi-monthly is perhaps, you might not see much change from report to report,
Okay.
but the bi-monthly with staff is essentially to keep the strategic plan top of mind as you're working through your reports. So it's perhaps we do a senior management team meeting bi-monthly, then it would be to talk about some of those strategic initiatives just to kind of prod a bit or keep it current as they go forward, which would be different than what would be reported to council would be, you will see when you come back is more of a table, more looking like what's in the back of our current strategic plan, which is a table with all the priorities, objectives, and the initiatives with the timeframes, as Councillor Will has spoken about too, about when they're expected to come with a change. So it'll be, red, yellow, green. Are we on track with this? Is there any changes and any comments on those, because of whatever reason, as you spoke of before. So that report will come back to council 3 times a year, but it would not be what is prepared with staff. So I think it's essentially a different thing for this monitoring piece.
You continue just, and I think that's, I know with the Conservation Authority, that's what they're doing now. We have a sort of a grid, red, yellow, green, and I guess my one question, I guess, overall, and I know this may come out down the road, but in terms of the initiatives, et cetera, will you have some kind of ranking system for, there may be initiatives that are great or not great, but how would I say this? That maybe not at the top of the initiative pile, but will there be a way to prioritize initiatives, I guess, or is it just going to be sort of, here's the 4 initiatives under whatever?
when we talked initially with the facilitator, we talked a little bit, and I don't know if that was in the session with council or in the staff session, but essentially in your day-to-day work, you should be expected to work 40% of your time on strategic initiatives. And so there's going to be a lot of things that staff will have to work on, and that will be up to individual department heads and managers on annual work plans for their staff to identify these. So the reason we would go back to senior management regularly and say, hey, don't forget, we're doing a youth engagement plan. When are you fitting that in? These initiatives will also be, I welcome council, input, but I'm also expecting staff input over the next month too. We will be assigning each initiative to a primary division, and that's their responsibility to deliver. And when we come up with a time frame, I'm going to expect them to give me the time frame that they think they will be able to address these. So we're going to have the right people assigned to it. So you'll have the one responsible division at least, so you'll know who's working on that. We did talk about these strategic initiatives. I advise staff that they are not supposed to be on top of what you're expecting to do every day. And so if you have work that you're working on just through normal course of action, being a good manager and things you're improving in your department, such as redoing the zoning bylaw is a good example of that. It's something that I know that the manager in that division wants to get to and is working on. And so I've suggested that these initiatives should be stuff you're already working on. And that if you're you're really busy doing things that aren't in the strategic plan, then you really should look at why. If it's operationally and legislated, compliance kind of pieces, if you're working on cemeteries or, environmental compliance for water, that's great. But if there's an initiative here that's assigned to your division, it should be the direction you're going on. And while we have, for instance, an environmental sustainability guiding principle, and we want to use an environmental lens on our projects, there's not a lot of environmental initiatives here, that have been included. And so if environmental division wants to go ahead and work on all of these initiatives because of the resilient climate action plan, but council hasn't kind of said that that's a priority. So we've sort of had that discussion, and ideally the initiatives are coming back to council or stuff that staff are working on already. And we're not going to be successful if it's just things that are added in addition to the normal workload. So we hope when we come back to you, we'll have buy-in from the staff that have assigned these, and they've put these down. This all came from staff. It wasn't from senior management per se. They were broken up into groups that kind of responded to the priorities and the objectives. So I do believe that through this process and monitoring, we'll be able to see. And as I said, we will look at initiatives on an annual basis when I come back to council and say, hey, we said we're going to do youth and senior center, but the hubs, the W.J. Henderson renewal project, we just talked about that. It's taking longer or taking more time, or trying to get it up and running is taking more time. And it's, it's in that 4-year window. And is that project really going to be something that we can support? So the initiatives are going to be part of that living document, and we'll come back. And if you see, red, we're not going to be able to do this, I think it's time to really take a critical look at that. And should it be part of the plan?
Fair enough. I think with, with the climate action plan, I guess in my simple way of thinking that it's part of the culture, and that, it in a decision-making process or in an initiative, it may not be right out there, but it's got to be a little consideration as to what's going on. So I think I'm going to make 3 more comments and then I'll be quiet. I really love the strong communities concept. And I think, going back to what the deputy said about, paying people, I think we need to have honorariums for committees to, and like you said, to respect their decisions. May not always agree, but I think an honorarium or something to show that we value that committee or that position or whatever it is. And specific initiatives, and I'm talking about sort of about branding here, is that our signage in the township right now is in bad shape. I walk by a place every day, and there hasn't been a sign there for 2 years. And we've had this conversation, you and I, about entry points to the township and some of the signage there. And to give you an example to share with the rest of the council, when you come in through Bath Road past Coronation, you have a block parent sign. Don't even know if there's a block parent anymore, whoever even exists. Deer crossing. Well, I don't know. Anybody seen a deer on Bath Road in the last 25 years? Because I haven't. And just, at that corner, oh, the sign, I see. Oh, okay. So they know not to cross. Oh, man. I got to get out more often. But, and then, there's a county sign, there's a township and county sign. And it just, I know it's a small thing, but visually it's just when you enter the town, you see the great sign in the 401. Now, I'm not saying go that far, but it's just, I think it, maybe it presents an image. Maybe I'm just overblowing it. I don't know, but that's my hang up. Great work. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments? Or any further items? Deputy Mayor.
Just a comment, and this is definitely for, the viewing audience and those who will view tonight's meeting, which hopefully there'll be lots of interest in the strategic plan, is, I just want to commend both staff and council for the work that's been done so far. Obviously, the mayor, myself, Councillor Bruder, Councillor Parks have been through this process before in recent years, and the process that we did together with staff, was very effective. And I think, staff and council are very much in line and on a similar track. And, that can sometimes be a challenge in other instances, and it's not in this case. I think there's a shared vision that we really are trying to articulate together. And I think the public should be confident, not only in the document as it goes forward, but in the process and in the sincerity with which it's been engaged, by both staff and council.
Thank you. Any other items before we go to the recommendation? Seeing none, the recommendation is that the report from the CAO dated December 4th, 2023, read 2024 to 2027 strategic plan be received, and that council provide comments with respect to the draft, which will be circulated for public comment. And council provide direction to staff to report back regarding any committees they wish to see establishing arising out of the strategic plan. Do I have a mover? Deputy Mayor, so moved, seconded by Councillor Parks. Comments from the mover? Seconder, any comments?
Sorry, just wanted to say, I think there's been lots of positive feedback on some recommendations and some changes. So we look forward to seeing they come back.
Thank you. Any other comments? I guess the one item, just thinking about it, the one item we didn't really look at were committees. There was the one committee that was mentioned, it's in the report. One of the questions was, are there other committees that council believes should be established, or, and do you want to speak to that?
Certainly, out of discussions taking place so far, the idea of a community well-being committee, I think staff sees some need for that in order to respond to our community safety well-being plan and some of the issues that council has identified arising from the public. We also do know that we have to kind of look at what committees were established at the old rec committee and those kinds of things. And so staff are due to have a report back to council to finalize that. But what I'm not hearing is sort of the need for any others. I did hear maybe out of the youth engagement plan, we might get a youth advisory committee, which can come down the road again, as council finds or sees a need through the development of the plan, the objectives, or any of those kinds of things. But I'm seeing just as of today, there's not really a need for any extra committees to be suggested. And so staff will finalize a report back to council about how to establish and reestablish those committees we have.
I'm a little bit out of order because I missed catching that earlier, but are there any concerns with that, those steps being taken then? And if anyone does think of a committee that they think would be beneficial to the township, please just share it with the CAO and the council.
Just a comment. I believe there is some kind of youth committee somewhere, because I know there's a Twitter account, Loyalist Youth Committee. And I've seen it on the sorry, on Twitter, or whatever it is now. Can't, X, sorry. Last time that guy gets a tie. Anyways, it just, there's something out there with the township branding on it in terms of youth engagement or youth committee or whatever.
I'm advised by staff that there's a county youth advisory committee at the moment, that we did try to have one. There wasn't enough engagement or participation at that time, but there is one through the county.
Okay. So with that, any further comments on the recommendation? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion is passed. And our last item is adjournment. Do we have a mover to adjourn? Counselor Willis, so moved, seconded by Counselor Ennis. All in favor? Motion is passed. We are adjourned at 8:02.